Hello and welcome to Seattle City Makers. I'm your host, Jon Scholes. Well, welcome to our latest episode, everyone. I'm joined by Bob Davidson, the president and CEO of the Seattle Aquarium, who recently announced his retirement from a 20-plus year career at the Aquarium. He announced that retirement back in October. He'll be at the helm through the middle of next year. And this episode's a bit of a look back on Bob's career and his impact on our city across his 20 years or so at the Aquarium, but also previously when he was at the helm of the Woodland Park Zoo and the leadership there and his impact on completing a $45 million renovation of the zoo. And prior to that, his time in politics and how he made the transition from politics to leading some of our city's most significant attractions. Bob is a Seattle guy, grew up here, grew up coming to the waterfront as a kid and getting fish and chips with his dad, and has had a profound impact on how we experience the waterfront today. In August, Bob and his team and dignitaries from Governor Inslee to Mayor Bruce Harrell and many others cut the ribbon on the opening of the new Ocean Pavilion at the Aquarium, a $170 million expansion of the Seattle Aquarium that sits underneath the new Overlook Walk that connects the Pike Place Market down to the Seattle waterfront. It is an incredible structure and attraction designed by Seattle architects LMN and built by Turner Construction. It is a tremendous addition to the waterfront, and in the first month it was opened, the attendance to the aquarium was just about double the attendance from the previous year. So Bob and I cover this incredible new jewel on the waterfront and his incredible career here in Seattle. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Bob Davidson, the president and CEO of the Seattle Aquarium. Morning, Bob.
Morning, John.
Thanks for having us down on the waterfront.
Welcome to
Bright
the
and
Ocean
early.
Pavilion.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I appreciated the tour a couple weeks ago. Are we waking the animals? Looks like they're already awake.
They're casing us out.
Yeah. When are their sleeping hours? Do they have sleeping hours?
Well, I think it varies, but yeah, I mean, they all have their own pattern.
They're up and at 'em right now, though. What is this that is right behind us here?
That's called a bowmouth guitarfish.
Whoa.
It's sort of a combo shark and ray and dinosaur.
I feel like he wants us to know he's here.
Yeah, he's
We're
making
in
his
his place.
presence known. He'll probably pick up another 100 pounds or so.
Really? Yeah, it's gorgeous.
He will, yeah.
Well, congratulations on bringing this to our city. Is it everything you hoped and dreamed over these many years of?
It's more, frankly. Yeah. It's, and especially just watching people show up and soak it up.
And enjoy it, yeah. And now you have the Overlook Walk and your roof fully open to the public.
Yeah.
That was quite a ribbon cutting a few weeks ago, and super fun to see the public start to use it.
Well, it was amazing to be standing up there for the the official ribbon cutting, and then as soon as that was over, the hundreds of people just flowed in from the Pike Place Market. It was like a medieval festival.
Yeah. And they're still flowing and using the space. I feel like we're all like armchair anthropologists and sociologists and marine biologists, perhaps, and seeing how the animals and people are now using these places and spaces that have been so long in the making. It's fun just to sort of sit back and observe. I imagine it's a great time for you.
It is. It's sort of a sense of discovery, and here, you spend a lot of time and effort, the architects, the exhibit design team, all the life sciences people and the educators make all kinds of plans, and you don't really know how the public is going to use it until they show up. And so, I mean, I remember on the opening day, I have two granddaughters, ages 5 and 7, and they disappeared while we were out by One Ocean Hall, and I looked around, and they were in a world of their own, just dancing in circles in the middle of the hall.
They didn't need to be by your side.
No,
yeah,
so young kids in that space, because there are images projected of the Coral Triangle and the ocean and sharks and all this, and so the kids are dancing or swimming on the floor. So who knew that would happen?
Discovery and exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did the idea for this expansion originate?
Oh, gosh. Well, I guess I would say that the aquarium opened in 1977. and it was built for $5.5 million. And a couple of years later, the Monterey Bay Aquarium was opened for $45 million. And just the scale of when people saw that, of what an aquarium could be. So had people thinking from that point that someday,
what's next for
maybe
Seattle?
Seattle would grow. And so the seeds were planted even then. There were a number of different ideas for what could be done. And, several times they were on a bond issue and didn't pass. And then in the 90s, late 90s, there was a sense with the dot-com boom that maybe there would be resources to do something huge. And that's when I was hired by the board at that time to do something huge. Well, the dot-com bubble burst, and the Nisqually earthquake happened. And, actually all these things led to this. With the viaduct gone and the connection to the market and the public park. And so I think this big idea is way bigger than that big idea would have been.
Yeah, it got more complex as time went on.
And connected.
Yeah, to tuck it under this Overlook Walk. We're not quite in the old footprint of the viaduct, no. So we're a little off of it,
right,
but not far.
Yeah, not far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the idea of incorporating it into this Overlook Walk structure, how did that come about for those that aren't familiar? And was that something the aquarium was sort of driving? And did you have any hesitation over the complexity of that versus let's find a place on the waterfront where we can just do a simple standalone building?
We never wanted that. And so when the Central Waterfront Citizens Committee was created, I was one of the original appointees, and from the very beginning, and Jim Corner and his team were brought in to kind of imagine how the whole waterfront could open up and bring the city into a much more connected state. We knew that we wanted the aquarium to be as powerful a force in that overall design, recognizing that we would be the only cultural institution in the park. And so at the very, as the thinking emerged of the connectivity, the different paths of connectivity into the city, with the main one being the connection into the Pike Place Market, we immediately thought about where we might fit in that. And in the early thinking, that was kind of taken as a thought by the team, and so we looked at 5 different spots that we could do it in this adjacent area, and depending on the distance, it might require a tunnel or a overhead bridge, and then as the thought of the connection to the market developed further, and we continued to raise our hands, we were invited in. And part of it had to do with cost, that some of the other ideas that they had thought about were going to be too expensive. And we had the ability to raise money. And we also had something that people wanted to see. So it all came together, and our team, our architects and exhibit designers and the cities, both the Corner Group and the other teams that were involved in the specific design of the Overlook Walk, just worked hand in glove for now years. And then the respective 3 different general contractors and everybody side by side. It's been a complex journey, but here it is.
Yeah, and they got there. And you sort of helped bridge that overlook, literally, of serving as a structure that they could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, so at the opening the other day, we're standing on the city project's side, and we're coming out onto the roof of this building, and it's seamless. And so the public is really experiencing this with a sense of awe and discovery, and it's one of the fun aspects of that is that many of the people in the region have not been downtown, as you know very well, since COVID, since before COVID, and so this is just joyful. And we see it at people coming in. We see it at people experiencing the view from the Overlook Walk and our roof, and with multiple generations. And it really is just a great sense of discovery, and it's fun to be part of that.
And your numbers for attendance in the first month or so since the Oceanfront Pavilion has been open relative to the same period last year have been
it's double.
Double.
Yeah.
Wow. And a really strong return or attendance by locals, so folks within 10 miles.
Yeah,
I know our own data shows
our
that.
member visits are like quadrupled.
That's fabulous.
And sales of memberships. They want to come back.
And I think that's what we all have hoped for this waterfront to be a big invitation, particularly post-pandemic, for folks to either come more frequently to downtown and explore the waterfront, or if you haven't been in 4 years since before the pandemic, to come back downtown. And that's certainly what we're seeing with the opening of this building and the Overlook.
Well, and I was up in the Pike Place Market last weekend, I think, in the middle of the day, and just looking around and wondering, are we really going to have more people in the market than we already have?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
But what it feels like now with the Overlook, and then what's to come with the rest of the waterfront opening in February or March, and then this great building, is you've got like places now for all those people to spill out onto, and to where they can continue their experience. Because we've all sort of taken our relatives to and through the market, and you can spend an hour or two and have a great time, and then you're sort of like, well, okay, now what? And this project, the Overlook, the waterfront, seems to answer that question of, well, keep going.
Absolutely. And I remember a good friend and supporter of ours, Tom Alberg, whom you knew, we were sharing the plans for all of this with him and his wife, years ago now, and he was talking about the from his vantage point of somebody who was trying to create in Seattle one of the tech centers in the world, and that people were coming to work here, and in the downtown, he said, from the standpoint of new arrivals, he felt that this was one of the things that would create a there that would want, especially young families, to feel that they wanted to make this their home longer than just a 2-year stint. And I think this is what we've done.
Yeah, we've definitely become a sticky town, not a pass-through town. And because of great experiences like this, I mean, it's hard to replicate this in another downtown where you've got the Elliott Bay and this great nature and national park. Well, 2 national parks you can see from this location. We've got a great view of Rainier on a clear day from where we're sitting, and then the Olympics, of course, and then this incredible urban environment.
Well, exactly. And it's a little like the experience that you have when you go to a football game at Husky Stadium.
Yeah.
And, I mean, in the whole country, where do you get that? Mount Rainier and the lake and the game and the whole city.
Yeah, Fox did a stellar job a few weeks ago of showcasing our city during that Michigan game, and the scenery and shots that they put forward are pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
So you're retiring.
You're saying it out loud.
By the time this is published, you will have announced your retirement after what, 20?
How long is it? It's 20, almost 23 years.
23, yeah. What are this has got to be a highlight other than this opening. What are some of the highlights from your career at the aquarium that will really stick with you?
Well, I do remember a first tour that I gave to my three sons just before I started of the original piers, and some of them hadn't had a lot of investment in them from the 1977 Open. And one of them, as we were walking out, said, "Well, Pops, I think you got your work cut out for you." So that was that sticks in my memory. But I think one of the moments was when the original historic pier, Pier 59, had a periodic engineering study in 2003 or so, and the engineering report to the mayor said that unless something is done to restore the structural integrity of this pier, the aquarium is going to have to close. And this was Greg Nichols. Mm-hmm. And he called the park superintendent and the Seattle Aquarium director, who then the aquarium was run by the city at that time, and me into his office, and we went over the report, and he said, "Well, I just want you to know that we're not closing the Seattle Aquarium on my watch. And so you guys have to sit down and figure out a plan, figure out how to restore the structural integrity, and figure out how to do it in a way that gives a boost to the future aquarium." And so we did. And it ended up with basically almost a $50 million program, and the city came up with half of that. Mm-hmm. And the nonprofit organization, which I headed at that time, which now runs the aquarium, said, "Well, we've never raised any money. We don't know how much we can raise, but we think we can at least raise enough to create a new corridor from Alaskan Way into the aquarium." And we ended up matching the city. So, and that set the stage. When that opened in 2007, that brought the entrance of the aquarium out to the street, mm-hmm. the new exhibits, the food services, the gift store, the primary exhibit, the window on Washington Waters. So a moment, you were asking for a moment, the moment when that 55,000-pound window dropped through a hole in the ceiling that we had created with the largest construction crane in the state of Washington.
Mm-hmm. How thick is that glass?
12 and a half inches thick.
I guess it's not glass,
acrylic.
Is it? It's acrylic, right?
The mayor and his wife were here, and board members watching from across the street, and that was one not repeated until we brought this window in below here. So that was big.
So far from a closure, an expansion and a repositioning.
Yeah. And it was the vision of the mayor and the talent. We had great leadership in the Parks Department, and a board of visionary people at the nonprofit Aquarium Society, and willing to go for it.
Mm-hmm. Perseverance, determination.
Yeah.
Certainly saw that in the opening of the Overlook. I was sort of marveling at the folks on James Corner's team who have been with him for, I think, 14 years.
Yes.
Through the duration of the design of this project. Then you look at the other civic leaders, whether it's Maggie Walker, Patrick Gordon, yourself, Bob Donegan, the folks that were standing up there that have been deeply invested in this from the get-go. And it's pretty remarkable to see the commitment and the duration of involvement and investment of those individuals. It's sort of what it takes to get something like this so complicated done.
It definitely does. And I'm a history person, and one of my favorite books was Dean Acheson's book. He was Secretary of State after the World War II, and the title of the book was Present at the Creation. So all those people that you mentioned were present at the creation.
I remember the event that was at the aquarium signing the deal between the governor and Mayor Nichols. I guess it was Ron Sims at the time. Was it Ron? Maybe it was Dow.
No, I think it was Ron.
Yeah. But to sort of memorialize the agreement of we're going to take the viaduct down, we're going to build a tunnel, and we're going to have a great waterfront.
Yeah.
In front of that big acrylic
and it was
wall.
and big fight, and an initiative filed by disgruntled citizens who wanted to keep the viaduct. But I don't think I haven't heard one person come up and say that standing on top of this building is not a better view than what they had driving their car.
Yeah, it lasts a little longer and it's safer.
That's right. You can bring your lunch.
You can stand there as long as you want.
Right.
So you have had a lot of interaction with government leaders, elected officials, the city throughout your career here and then previously at the zoo. And you had a background in politics, chief of staff for a congressman and I think some other roles. How did that experience sort of prepare you for what is a pretty political job in raising money and getting permits and building in public right-of-way, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, this is not a role that is to everybody's taste. But as a kid, growing up in Tukwila, Foster High School, I was fascinated by American history, and I wanted to go to the East Coast to college, where I thought American history was pretty much made. I got my wish, had the opportunity as a result of those resources that you get to be able to work in politics, work at the White House, work here helping elect people to office whom I was proud to work for and with, and to meet and work with people whom I still know, who are there to make a difference. And that's all of those things were part of how we were able to make all this happen, because it's complex. You got multiple layers of government and the taxpayers and citizens that each serves. You have business. You have the fabric of the cultural institutions in the region and how they all fit together. The nonprofit. One of the things that I would say my political experience helped me to understand was the value of volunteers. And in the campaigns that I ran, the people who really propelled the campaign were the volunteers and the donors, and they wanted to help change the world, and were willing to give their time freely, and that's has been a part of the secret of the Citizens Committee that spent all these years working on the plans and the vision and the work and raising money, and the same with the aquarium. Some of the people on the board of the Seattle Aquarium now were there 23 years ago when they decided to hire me, and they're still there, and they're still working, and it's really. It is a great joy. One of the things that I will miss is being in the midst of all of that. But, there's a time when the next team needs to come on deck.
What influenced your transition from politics to zoos and aquariums?
It was a random accident. I got married, and
that wasn't an accident.
That wasn't an accident.
Was right?
It was one of the great lucky stories of my life. And my wife was from a pioneer family here in Seattle. She was willing to go to Washington, D.C., but not anxious to go to Washington, D.C. And so we decided, and also by that time I knew enough about the political world that had been my whole life to realize it would be a tough realm to raise a family.
Mm-hmm.
So we came out. I went to work for a family business, old family business, printing business in Seattle, whose owners had introduced me and my wife. And with the idea that I learn the business and ultimately own the business. And the learning part worked out. And by the time there was that opportunity, I had decided that I probably wasn't where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And in the meantime, I'd been asked to join the board of the Woodland Park Zoo Society. And at a time when there were, I think, 17 members, the Zoo Society had never raised any money. None of the board members had ever been asked to give any money. The zoo didn't have any money to complete the long-range plan.
And it was owned and managed by the city still?
By the city, by the
time.
Parks Department.
Yeah.
And the zoo director, David Hancock's, was frustrated that they had this visionary long-range plan for the zoo that became the world standard for a 20th century zoo. But there was the original money, which had come from the federal government and forward thrust bond issue, was gone, had been spent, and there was no more. And he quit, attacked the mayor and attacked the city council and the business community for their lack of vision. And so I and a couple of the other board members, including Jerry Johnson and Dick Swanson, met with Hancock's and said, well, what is, tell us more about this plan. I mean, obviously you're gone, you've burned your bridges, but what is this plan? And he went over it and we said, well, how much would it cost? I don't know, nobody's done that calculation. How long would it take? I don't know. What would be involved in it? Well, we just had never planned that far. And so the three of us went to Charlie Royer, who was the mayor, and said, we think you need to appoint a blue ribbon commission to figure out how to complete the long-range plan for the zoo. And he, after significant conversation that night, he said, I'll do it on the condition that the three of you serve on the commission. And what we thought might be a 6-person commission ended up being a 50-member commission, because when he announced it, he was deluged with people who wanted to be on the committee. And out of that came the plan, which was roughly a $50 million plan, and it would include like a $35 million bond issue from the city or the county, and private money, and a mix. And so the county stepped up and decided to put it on the ballot. It passed by a high 70% rate. And then somebody needed to raise the private money. And so I agreed to set up the private side of the zoo. That's a long answer to your question.
And was that the moment that the management of the zoo transitioned from the city to?
No,
came later.
That came quite a bit later.
So the private money was given without conditions of a new management model.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in that position, I checked out. I studied zoos and aquariums around the country and their governance structures, and clearly the structure that had emerged, as for all kinds of reasons, but most zoos and aquariums, most aquariums in particular, are built in the center of large cities. And by that time, the vision of what is an aquarium had dramatically changed, and likewise with zoos. And cities were dealing with all sorts of competition for their resources, social services, policing, all the sorts of urban problems that we are very much in front of us today. And the resources to provide a zoo or an aquarium to the standards that we now have were not simply not there. And so what happened was a shift to ongoing public ownership of all the leading aquariums and zoos and nonprofit management. And so I made that recommendation to the city for the zoo in a parting op-ed in the Times, and it took another 10 years or so before that happened, and I didn't want to stay unless it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I had a stint in business in the meantime, and then as I was moving out of that, and I went and got an MBA in the meantime to sharpen my management skills. The aquarium reached out, and in fact, Dave Town, who was the zoo director, said, the aquarium's looking for somebody to do what we did at the zoo. You should have put your name in the hat. And I won't tell you what my reaction was, but the aquarium at that time needed a lot. And he said, well, you know what? What you know is what they need. And so you shouldn't feel uncomfortable about taking up that challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 23 years ago.
And at that time, was the structure and model of management the same as what you left with the zoo, or city owned the underlying asset?
So the zoo had made the transition to nonprofit management. The aquarium had not.
Right.
And the Aquarium Society had people on its board who had vision and aspirations for what the aquarium could become, but they had not proven to the city that they could run the aquarium.
They could take the keys.
And it was the project where Pier 59, the $50 million project, where the society matched the city and managed the building of all the cool stuff, the exhibits and all of that, that as soon as that was completed, the mayor and the city council and the parks department agreed to sit down with us and negotiate the change. 1 year later, on July 1st of 2010, the city turned over the management to the Zoo Society.
To the aquarium.
To the Aquarium Society.
Right.
Yeah.
You had proven yourself in their eyes.
And which was reasonable. And, and this is a cherished public asset, and the city had to act responsibly, and we've proven that as we're sitting here, we could do that.
Yeah, a pretty incredible track record both here and at the zoo, and maybe the broader public doesn't realize sort of that structure and how they're managed, but it's certainly been a success story in delivering great experiences and top quality facilities.
And for this project, we've raised almost $100 million from private sources. That's a lot of money. And people don't give that kind of money to something they don't trust.
Yeah. I know you've had a long history with the waterfront and coming down here with your dad as a kid. What were some of those highlights and great memories of, when the viaduct was here and it was a little bit more gritty back then, I think, as you describe and others would describe their waterfront experience? Well,
I mean, so to your point, I was born on the way from the farmlands of North Dakota to Ballard, and when I was about 6, we moved out in the Tukwila area, and my dad was an electrician for Puget Power then. My mom was a nurse, and we didn't have a lot of cash floating through the house, but a special treat for us was to come down to the waterfront, and on paydays, and my dad would run in and get fish and chips from the Ivers Fish Bar, bring it out to the car, and that would be an adventure. And wander around a bit, and it was gritty. I mean, this was before containerization. Ships would be out here. The city was divided. The waterfront was not a place that people would typically go for recreation. It was very industrial. The viaduct was, people liked the viaduct because you could have the view and not have to be on the waterfront.
It was the escape and bypass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ivor himself, was a character, and he was a regular, made regular appearances on children's TV in Seattle when I was growing up, and he played his guitar and sang songs, and so that was a fixture of growing up in Seattle.
Yeah, it's not a bad day down on the gritty waterfront with your dad.
Yeah.
Fish and chips and seeing a guy you see on TV.
Right.
It's pretty cool. So what were some of the biggest challenges, sleepless nights in your career here, both at the aquarium and at the zoo? I mean, you're running these 24-hour facilities with a lot of people you got to worry about, but also animals.
I think the at the zoo, it was the I don't remember. I mean, I guess there was the time when the monkeys escaped from the exhibit, and there were 27 monkeys all over Phinney Ridge.
Wow. When was that?
That was in the 70s. That was in the I guess the early 80s.
Yeah.
And so it was all hands on deck to bring them back. And what had happened was that a group of new arrivals came in from South America, and they didn't realize that they didn't know how to jump across the moat and make it to the trees on the other side.
The zoo staff didn't realize
and
their dexterity.
Zoo staff didn't realize they could either. So it was all hands on deck, and I think all but two came back home, and one of them unfortunately was run over, and the other one was never found.
Made a nice life for themselves up in Phinney Ridge somewhere.
Yeah.
That's quite the crisis to manage.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting. And there was another time at the zoo when the orangutans figured out how to open the door to their exhibit, and were out visiting with the public. But Dave Town could tell that story better than I could. At the aquarium, I think the highest drama in both in this project and in the Pier 59 project were when the giant window was installed. Mm-hmm. And in each case, they came from the same manufacturer in Colorado. There were only 3 places in the world that could build a window like that. And they were put on the back of a special truck, and with a State Patrol escort driven out here. This one for Pier 59 was installed in the middle of the night because they had to stop traffic on Alaskan Way. And it took quite a lot longer than people thought it would, but it was, as the 55,000-pound window is hanging, anything could happen.
You're holding your breath.
Yeah. So
were you down here?
Yeah, and then on this, yes, in this one, there were almost 40 people in the just outside where we are right now, each of whom had some role in either watching for safety things or the people who were supervising it that's all they do all over the world is they install windows like that.
Who knew?
And it is really something to behold.
Highly specialized.
Just tiny tolerances are required to make sure that the fit is exactly right.
Yeah, I imagine the real test is when you fill the thing with water and you hope it holds, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then with this project, another high drama moment was the pouring of the concrete, which around us right now and for the major exhibit. And that was something that took, I think, almost 21 hours of a continuous concrete pour. That's significant.
Indeed. And you had to face a concrete strike in addition to a pandemic to get this thing
we did
done.
Yeah. And that was, that took a lot of agility and planning on the part of the project management, both from our side and from the contractor's side and the architect's side, to make sure that we could make all that happen.
How do you hope the roof ultimately gets used here? Your roof, and then as it spills out into the city's public park and public right-of-way on the Overlook?
Well, so we are we and the Friends of Waterfront Park and the Parks Department are all working on plans for exactly how that will play out. At the previous to this building opening, we have the Seattle Aquarium has like 140 third-party events a year, from everything from weddings to Amazon to Microsoft to private birthday parties. It's a great resource to environmental organizations who want to have their event or bill signing in front of that window. And the same will be true here. And we will in the design of the roof and the connectivity to the market, it was specifically designed to always provide, during open hours, to always provide the public a free corridor to get up and down from the market to the waterfront and the reverse. And it's designed so that there is an adjacent space which can be used for community events of various kinds. So that's all under discussion right now, and I'm sure we'll work out something that's beneficial to the community.
Yeah, it feels like that spot is going to be sort of the new Vista vantage point, the new Cary Park.
I think that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. So do you have any advice for your yet-to-be-named successor?
I think I'll be sparing in my advice, but I think the nature of this spot in this town puts the aquarium at the very center of the future of the city, and it's a big responsibility and a big opportunity. And it's tied into the mission of the aquarium, which is inspiring conservation of our marine environment. And the reason that there are people gathered here in a city over thousands of years is because we're right next to the water. And that's never been more true than now. And the importance of the health of the ocean, which we now realize Puget Sound is a part of. When I was growing up, we thought there were 7 seas, and Puget Sound was kind of, when the aquarium was originally built, that was the whole focus, was Puget Sound and Washington waters. And now we know this is all connected to the health of the ocean, and the health of the ocean is critical to the survival of life on this planet.
Do I have it right that the original existing aquarium almost didn't end up in downtown? There was some debate about having it up north, I think in Ballard, right?
Oh, yeah, there wasn't some debate.
A lot of debate.
There was a lot of debate.
Yeah.
The city council, the Yes, there was a lot of debate, and it basically broke down to Dixie Lee Ray, who was the marine scientist and was the head of the Pacific Science Center after the World's Fair. She wanted the aquarium to be put out at Golden Gardens as basically a scientific institution. And Jim Ellis, who was the father of Forward Thrust and Metro, and who had included $5.5 million in the Forward Thrust bond issue to build a new aquarium, felt that it belonged on the central waterfront. And so they fought back and forth. At one point, the city council actually voted to put it at Golden Gardens, and there was a big uproar over that. And my boss, Joel Pritchard, who was a very, very close ally of Jim Ellis's, was involved in conversations on where it should be.
Were you working for Joel at the time?
Yeah.
So you had a connection to this place before
I did.
Existed.
Yeah, and so the decision was made to put it right here, and that was the best possible decision that could have been made. And all you have to do is look at the tens of thousands of people walking by, and it could never have filled the role that it is now filling from Golden Gardens.
Yeah, nothing against Ballard, but we're glad it's downtown.
Right.
Glad so many of the great arts and cultural and sports, convention center, big civic attractions and buildings are in the downtown. It's a unique feature of our urban core.
And this is now the aquarium with the addition of this building is the by attendance the largest cultural institution in the downtown. And so it has become the scale of what the aquarium is, not only in terms of the number of people and the nature of its being a component of what people want to see in the city, has made it much more integrated into the economy of the city, and so that is something that we recognize. And we want to play our part in that, and it's an important role in the mayor's vision of One Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely. We conclude with two standard questions, Bob. The first is, what was your first job?
Where I got a paycheck.
Where you got a paycheck? Not cash.
My first job was I didn't get a paycheck, but I was delivering newspapers. But you
got tipped, I imagine.
Yeah. But my first job with a paycheck was sophomore year of high school. My older brother and one of his buddies got jobs working for the Oval Fruit Company in Orondo, Washington, on the banks of the Columbia River near Wenatchee. And I did everything from learned how to do everything from thinning apples to splicing in the little bud that makes a peach a nectarine, to cleaning up junk, and learning how to live all by ourselves in the worker cottage, in the worker building, at the orchard. And I also learned there was a fellow named Grady Oval who was the leading family member, who was a legendary figure in the apple business in the state of Washington, and is the one who brought Granny Smiths to the United States. But he used to stop by on his Ford Model T modified car, and he'd just sit there and chat politics. And so I not only learned about apples and learning how to keep time on a punch card, but I also learned how to have respectful conversations about politics.
Was that influential to your interest in getting into politics?
It was. Yeah. He was had been involved in in with the FDR administration, getting the Grand Coulee Dam built and irrigation to eastern Washington, and was a dyed-in-the-wool Roosevelt Democrat, and I was at that moment in time a Republican, and he used to get the biggest kick out of arguing with me, and so I learned a lot.
That's great. And our final question is, what's your perfect Saturday in Seattle? And if you want to fast forward to June and post-retirement, and maybe your Saturday will look different, I don't know, but you can pick a current Saturday or future cast here.
Well, of course, I would have to start out by saying non-optional is a visit to the aquarium.
Of course, retired or not.
Retired or not. And so, I have memberships to the Art Museum and Mohi, and I love those places. I like to walk in the Seattle Park. I walk, all the way north to Expedia, and this is going to be even better with fabulous work that Melinda Gates and Mackenzie Scott and Furstenberg are doing. So I like that. I like to go to the market for breakfast. And
what's your breakfast spot you got to go to?
Well, I go to the Athenian, or there are a couple of other places up there that I go to.
That sounds like a delightful Saturday.
Yeah.
And one that's only going to get better as this waterfront
well, and
gets
the other
completed.
thing, I also take the ferry over to Bainbridge Island or Bremerton and wander around and go to the Bloedel Reserve or Port Gamble. There's so much rich things that are right on our doorstep, either right here or immediately on a ferry ride.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate to have the variety of places and landscapes and geography and climates to go explore and within 3 hours. It's hard to find that in a lot of other states where you can drive 12 hours and it all looks the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, and my wife's great-grandfather founded what was called the Blackball Ferry Line.
Oh yeah.
And one of his 9 sons, Captain Peabody, built the Kalakala. And so I've always felt an attachment to the ferries.
And the water. Right?
And the water is who we are.
Well, thank you for making time for this and for your years of service to the zoo and the aquarium and public service as well. That's no doubt benefited our community immensely. And I look forward to coming back here and experiencing the aquarium and the roof and the overlook and all that you've helped bring to the waterfront. So thank you, Bob.
Thank you. It's been a great journey and more to come.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Bob Davidson. Really appreciate him making time to join us. And he's got some big shoes to fill over there at the aquarium. And we're grateful for the impact he's had on our city in so many different ways, and just an all-around great guy. So thanks again to Bob for making it on Seattle City Makers. I want to close out with a recommendation of something you got to check out in downtown Seattle. In this case, I want to highlight and lift up Lennox, a restaurant that opened this past summer in Belltown. And Seattle Eater describes the space as airy and tropical, which, as we get into the darker months, the big dark here in Seattle, sounds perfect. Perfect place to escape. Lennox has got a great story. It pays its homage to Lennox Street in Harlem. It's Afro-Latin food, a great menu, and we're glad to see them planting their flag with their first brick and mortar here in downtown Seattle. So open Wednesday through Sunday, 4:30 till close. Go check out Lennox on First Avenue in Belltown. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on this episode of Seattle City Makers, presented by the Downtown Seattle Association with support from James Cito and production by Spark Creative.